It's just gone 7:45 a.m. on this Tuesday morning, and you're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's a special show for you over the next hour and a half or so. We're going to be looking ahead at some of the culture that you should be consuming this Christmas. Sue Murphy, Nathan Murphy and Tommy Rooney will be with us in studio to talk through their favourite picks, some of the things you might have missed from this year, or anything from previous years, indeed, anything you want to watch, anything you want to read, or any TV shows you should take a look at this Christmas. You can tweet us at Off The Ball, or you can comment on the stream on Facebook or on YouTube. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We'd also love to hear your thoughts, rugby fans out there, of your favourite rugby players from the year 2018. Not the best, but your favourite. Neil Treacy of the Tide 5 will be joining us a little bit later on to go through his 10 favourite rugby players from the year 2018. A lot of Irish talent in that list. And also, we're going to be looking back at the footballing year in the company of Daniel Harris, who is with us now. Good morning to you, Daniel.
Good morning.
So we can see on the sidebar there your 5 biggest stories from the year 2018. Some of them with a lot of relevance looking at the year 2019 and beyond. We can see the Russia World Cup, the Qatar World Cup there. We're going to be chatting a little bit about Raheem Sterling, the end of the Wenger era, which was one of the big stories from 2018, and one of probably the biggest story in club football this year has been Jose Mourinho and Manchester United. We'll get to that in just a moment, but we should look back first of all on the Russia World Cup. I guess from an English perspective, Daniel, it was an incredible one, and I guess even from an Irish perspective, from an international perspective, I think neutrals were rather obsessed by the idea of football's coming home, and we really entered the post-ironic era when it came to English football this summer.
It was a pretty, speaking more generally, it was a pretty, just focusing on the football to begin with, it was a pretty good World Cup. It wasn't a great World Cup. When you think about the games that the greatest games, I guess Belgium and Brazil was pretty good. But other than that, in the kind of the later stages, the classic games between two classic teams, there wasn't really any of that. And the team that won it in the end, France, you kind of got the impression that under a different manager, they could be quite a lot better than they actually were. And the state of them subsequent to that also hasn't cast aspersions on the fact that they won the World Cup, because obviously they won the World Cup. But when France won the World Cup in 1998, they weren't really a great team. They only played well a couple of times in that competition. But after that, fortified with the confidence of being world champions, they then went on and became a great team. This lot have absolutely not done that, and they've gone and played like ourselves since they won the World Cup. And so it means that we look at them slightly differently. I was kind of thinking, well, they've got Paul Pogba, they've got Kylian Mbappe, they've got Antoine Griezmann, they've got young and brilliant players. So there's a lot of scope for improvement, but it just hasn't happened. So there's that. As far as England are concerned, it's funny, really, what can be done with quite little, in that England played brilliantly against Tunisia for a half, and they played pretty well against Sweden, and they played really well against Croatia for a half. That's not a lot, really. And Gareth Southgate came back from the World Cup a national hero, and yet every time his team were put under pressure, he was unable to respond. He made bad substitutions, he made bad tactical changes or no tactical changes. I mean, you look at the game against Croatia, for example, and this is probably a reflection in its way of English football, because Gary Neville at half-time said, England just need to keep doing what they're doing. And I was sitting there watching it thinking, they absolutely do not need to do that, because Croatia are not going to play as badly again. And Gareth Southgate sort of assumed that was going to happen again as well. And lo and behold, Croatia did not play as badly again. They played England off the pitch and ended up beating them in extra time. But the reason why Gareth Southgate is this kind of national hero is about more than football. And that is, in its way, the beauty of football. Football is about more than football. And what he did was behave in a pleasant and dignified way. He treated the people that worked for him in a nice way to extract the most from them. And he presided over a team that were very different to the alpha male shouting dickheads of previous competitions, who may have been better individually, but probably struggled to buy into the team ethic, and also were arranged in such a way by their managers to not be a team, but to be a collection of the biggest names available in English football. And Gareth Southgate's team are different to that. They are a more obvious and a more pleasant representation of English society and English culture. And they were allowed to express themselves on the pitch. And what you've got from that team is people in England now have hope. There are fully young players who are going to get better. a young manager who's going to get better. And the challenge now is for England to go on and actually compete again in the same way in the next Euros. And people will feel, and I think rightly so, that they've got a much better shot at winning that than they had at winning this World Cup.
Yeah, for sure. That's certainly one of the biggest legacies from the 2018 World Cup. And when we asked you for your 5 biggest stories from the year 2018, you mentioned, as we could see in the sidebar, the Qatar World Cup. Why?
Well, I guess something that we didn't quite get to just now when we were discussing Russia is that the problem with football is that it's just a bit too good. So what happened in Russia and what's happening again with Qatar is you've got these countries that have major human rights issues, and people complain about them a little bit beforehand, and then the football starts. And people then forget about them. And that is a problem. I mean, it's not just a problem for football, it's a problem for society. But what we've seen in the Qatar World Cup is we're seeing these grounds being built by slaves where people are dying. And when the football starts, people are going to forget about these things. And we must never forget about these things, because they're things that are more important than football. And I mean, the fact that there's even a World Cup in Qatar is completely ludicrous in the first place. It's like having the Winter Olympics in Tranmere. I mean, it's just like if your country is too hot to have a football World Cup in the time when the football World Cup is held, you may not have a football World Cup. It really is as simple as that. And I can't even believe I have to make these points. And then that is exacerbated by the fact that if you're a country that is so small, it doesn't have very many football grounds, or football grounds that it doesn't have to build afresh, has no football culture to speak of, has no football history to speak of. And the only reason it wants it is for reasons that have really very little to do with football and everything to do with geopolitics and regional politics and PR for repressive regimes and all these things. Like, when it's unfortunate, I mean, we're not the victims here, but we talk about sport because we like to talk about sport. We don't really want to be talking about this kind of thing, but it's incumbent upon us to keep talking about these kinds of things, because these kinds of things transcend sport and they transcend media, and we need to keep talking about them because they're going to be bigger and bigger issues in our world. And I think we probably saw a little warm up of what's going to happen in the future with the Boca River game that ended up in the Bernabeu because of crowd trouble in Argentina. But that showed people that you can pull off events like that in places like that, places that have nothing to do with them, and people will still come, you'll still make a stack of money, and you'll still be successful. And we need to remain vigilant to make sure to do everything we can to stop that happening with other sporting events that are particularly rooted in a place. And because if that happens, the places that they're going to end up being are places like Qatar, where there is a lot of disposable income and a will to divert our attention from other terrible things that are going on.
That's the key point there, because I always think that the idea that a sporting event can vastly change the quality of life for people in the country that it's in is complete nonsense. Like, I mean, you look at the last Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, for example, and in Brazil as a whole, like absolutely doing nothing. In fact, the problem of white elephants is something that's definitely synonymous with the idea of the 2016 Olympic Games. But it is, in terms of the international public relations, especially about a country that most football fans don't know too much about in Qatar, that their entire worldview about Qatar, and to a certain extent that part of the world perhaps after 2022, is going to be affected by this very plastic image of the country that we're going to see in our television sets.
100%. I mean, if you look at even the London Olympics, which is now history paints as this time when we all really liked each other, and wasn't it amazing? And the sport in the London Olympics was amazing, but everything else about the London Olympics was not amazing. I think that when Theresa May was Home Secretary at the time, and I think that her whole hostile environment strategy began at that point. The Mayor of London at that time was Boris Johnson, who used the status of being Mayor of London and used the Olympics to go and pursue his far right-wing agenda of Brexit. And he's now praising Viktor Orban, the anti-Semitic Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, and he derived that platform from London. So people shouldn't think this kind of thing can't happen where we are either, because that's absolutely not true. And what you get with Qatar, and what you're seeing with Abu Dhabi and Manchester City also, is that if you want to touch the largest number of people that it is possible to do in the world, if you want to make contact with those people, if you want to attract their attention, if you want to put out a message, There is nothing that will do that for you in the way that football can. What is the one thing that is liked by the highest number of people in the world? Like, the answer to that question is probably football. Like, possibly religion, but probably football. And with religion, you end up with a whole load of other. There are lots of religions, and it's very hard to say, well, this particular one can do this. Whereas football you can talk to people, and you can talk to them through a means that they understand and through a means that they can enjoy. And that is why football has been targeted in the way that it has by Qatar, by Abu Dhabi, and by Roman Abramovich for different reasons. I mean, he was probably more concerned with making sure that he stayed alive, but the principle remains the same. If you want to contact people, if you want to put a message out to people, if you want to attract people's attention, if you want to make them think well of you, then the way to do that is through football. And football needs to be aware of that and needs to understand that, and it needs to govern itself with that in mind, not pandering to whoever will write them the biggest paycheck.
Let's talk about Raheem Sterling, because it's item number 3 on our talking points of the year list. And I do wonder, if you told Raheem Sterling 12 months ago that he would become this incredibly powerful voice by the end of 2018, how surprised he would have been. It might not have been a title that he ever wanted to have, but it seems like a title that he is the character, the type of man who will embrace this into the future. Should there be more issues like the ones he's spoken out about in the last couple of weeks, or indeed not towards him specifically, but in the league as a whole, you do feel he has that potential to be an agent to be a voice of good and an agent for change?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty and the brilliance of what Raheem Sterling did was he didn't just make it about the racist abuse he received from one bloke in a football ground. Because, I mean, no one would deny that happens. And if that were to happen, it's just very easy for everyone to say, well, that bloke's just an arsehole. Like, he's an arsehole, he's gone to the game, he's not attached to anyone, he's not attached to anything, he doesn't represent anyone, doesn't represent anything. And we all know that racism's bad. But Raheem Sterling, in the way that he spoke, in the way that he wrote, made sure that it is not just about that. Because racism is not just about answering yes or no to the question, do you think that Jews, black people, Indian people, whatever it might be, do you perceive them to be less than? Because people know that saying that other people are less than is wrong. But racism exists in far more subtle ways. And not only that, but racism at the football ground doesn't just reflect racism at a football match. It reflects the structures of our society. And it reflects the fact that we live in a society that is and has been dominated by white people, and usually white men. And football media reflects that. All the media reflects that. It reflects in football management. And all of those things contribute to a society that operates to the benefit of a particular group of people, usually white men. You see it in our governments, and you see it in our boardrooms, and you see it everywhere you care to look. And what Raheem Sterling did was he provided a unifying theory of injustice. And it's that will continue the conversation. Because otherwise, as I said, it could just have been categorised as that bloke's an arsehole. And it's not about that bloke being an arsehole, it's about our system being an arsehole. And we all need to work together and to fight every time we see evidence of that system being an arsehole. And that is basically entirely because of Raheem Sterling's dignity and bravery in speaking up for those things.
It does feel like a game changer, Daniel, doesn't it? This doesn't feel like previous racial incidents where somebody has spoken out about it. There's a different feel about this. Now, like when we were talking about the year that's gone, we are still 2 weeks out from this. It is still quite a fresh news story, but I feel hopeful that this is something that might inspire some sort of meaningful change. I'm not sure, maybe I'm being too naive.
No, it's not naive to hope for change, but in terms of like actually bringing about change, I mean, we're talking about hundreds, thousands of years of prejudice. So Raheem Sterling is not responsible to change that. He's not capable of changing that. We can't expect him to change that. All that we can do is we can use the impetus that he's given the conversation to keep having the conversation, to keep having these conversations, but not just to have conversations, to take it upon ourselves to effect those changes in whichever way we can. And sometimes that might be by speaking up, but there'll be other people who are watching this who are employers, who are able to employ people to do particular jobs. And so they're in a position to say, well, actually, I'm going to positively discriminate, or I'm going to make sure that every time I interview some black minority ethnic people, whatever it might be, that people are in a position to be able to give opportunities to other people. So while we're on the subject of that, I'm going to say that our audience should be interested in CARICOM, which is a new magazine that sits at the web. The Black Experience meets football, and people are able to buy that on the internet. People are able to contribute to the production of that on the internet, and that is something, for example, that we can do. We can raise up minority voices that have previously been marginalised in whatever way we can, and that will help us change the conversation and make a better society.
Yeah, for sure. When we were sitting down and thinking about 2018 as a whole, there was one football club that we absolutely had to talk about, and that is Manchester United. Like in all your years talking about Manchester United, following Manchester United, writing about Manchester United, has 2018 been the worst year in living memory for Manchester United?
Oh, no, not even close. The worst year that will always continue to be the worst year until there's another worst year will be 2005, when the club was sold to the Glazers.
Good point.
Because everything we see is a manifestation of that. But also, even if we were to remove that from the equation, although I am fit that at some point the Glazers will sell to people even worse than they are, and then that will become even worse. But everything that happens in the context of United happens in the context of what happened through the Fergie era. So nothing will be worse than having not won the league for 25 years, losing the league, two leads at Anfield. Everything that happens subsequent to that happens 13 league titles and 2 European Cups later. So that no one will ever really know that feeling again, or at least for quite some time. So it's not the worst for United supporters. I think what United supporters have now is the two teams that happen to be competing for the league and the two teams that no United supporter would want to see either of them win the league. So when at least Liverpool had to sit there and watch United winning everything in sight, they were always competing with another team that they would prefer to beat United. Whereas United have literally got the worst of all worlds. If Liverpool don't win the league, Manchester City will. And then what happens if Liverpool win the league and Manchester City win the Champions League? I mean, that would not be good for a United supporter. But the thing about United now under Mourinho is that it's reached a point where it's very hard to fathom how any manager in world football would be getting less out of the squad of players that Mourinho has now. I said this yesterday on Twitter and got some aggravation for it. Happily, Jamie Carragher then said more or less the same thing about 10 minutes later. So I felt that I was able to direct Liverpool supporters to that. Where he said that if you compare the squads of Liverpool and United, there's not that much in it. Liverpool are a bit stronger probably, but there's not that much in it. Because personally, when I look at the City squad and I think, well, who are the best players around in world football? And I think that some of them, Sergio Aguero, Kevin De Bruyne, David Silva, are high-level players who are amongst the best in the world anywhere, and there's not a lot United can do to compete against them if they're all playing and they all play well. But then I look at Liverpool and I think, well, if you gave me a blank checkbook to go and sign any player that I wanted in world football and those players would have to come, I wouldn't spend too much time looking at the players that Liverpool have. But what they have is they have a manager who has got a system of playing that suits his players. He's got rid of the players that he didn't think suited that system, even if they might have not been terrible players. He's bought players to fit that system, and he inspires those players to give the most for themselves and to give the most for him, and it's working. Whereas what Mourinho's got is he's got a bunch of players who don't fit the system that he wants to play. He's gone and bought more players who don't fit the system that he wants to play, and he then keeps changing the systems that he wants to play. And every now and again, in the time that he's been at United, something has worked. So last season, they played really nice attacking football. They beat Watford, I think, 4-2 away from home. And then a few days later, they beat Arsenal 3-1 away from home. And then on New Year's Day, they beat Everton playing really nicely. And then this season, they had a few games. They played Everton at home, Juventus away, where they looked like a team that knew what it was doing. The problem was that each time, the key players were not players that Mourinho particularly likes. The style was not a style that Mourinho particularly likes, and most of the time it didn't involve Lukaku, who is a player that Mourinho likes. So every time that's happened, he's eventually, and as quickly as possible, gone back to the way that he thinks football is. And I'm not saying that football can't be that way. If Mourinho had his 2004-5 Chelsea team, I think they would beat Liverpool handily. I think they'd push City as well, because the way that he played then suited those players. He had brilliant defenders, and he had very fast attackers and a centre-forward able to hold the ball up. That doesn't fit the team that United have. And he keeps trying to play 4-3-3 with a squad that would be much better with a 4-4-2 diamond, because he doesn't think that football should be played that way. And so we come now where every now and again there'll be a couple of weeks where they look all right, because either injuries and circumstance force him to pick the better players, or the individuals that he has, that are still good individuals, do something good, then he goes back to what he knows, it doesn't work, and we start through the sequence again. And at some point he'll be fired. He probably won't be fired until he can't get into the Champions League, because the Glazers are bothered about money more than they're bothered about football, and they only care about football in as much as it affects money. And it's depressing because the season needn't be over yet. They're 11 points off the Champions League. That's not insurmountable. It's hard, but it's not insurmountable. They've got PSG in the next round of the Champions League. PSG obviously better than United, but again, they're not impenetrable. They lost to Liverpool this season. They played Liverpool off the pitch in Paris, and yet still only beat them by 1 goal. United have the players, the attacking players, to give any side a hard night if they play well. But under Mourinho, that is unlikely to happen. If United were to get rid of Mourinho now, it's hard not to see that whoever took the job would get less out of these players. And so the season is not done yet, but as long as Mourinho hangs around, then from now till May is a waste of time.
So no big expectations for 2019 from a Manchester United perspective until the point that they get rid of Jose Mourinho. One last point that we wanted to touch on, Daniel, is Wenger's legacy and the end of Arsene Wenger at Arsenal, because I guess when you think of this, it probably should be one of the biggest football stories of the year. And I guess the appointment of Arsene Wenger was one of the biggest modern football stories we've had in the Premier League. But the departure doesn't feel as seismic as the arrival, and I guess that sums up the rather sad decline of the manager near the end of his reign. And the legacy is one of, a manager who comes in from PSG, who actually wants to try and repair, and it is a job of repair that he's doing, and doing it rather well at the moment. And you do wonder, at this distance, can we properly judge the legacy of Arsene Wenger and be realistic about what he actually left behind him?
Yeah, I think so. The legacy of Wenger is definitely the best football of my lifetime that I've seen watching football. The best football by far that I've seen was when his Arsenal team and Fergie's United team were competing regularly and playing an incredibly high standard of football, and almost every game between those teams was a classic, and it happened game after game after game. And to me, that's Wenger's greatest legacy. It's quite rare in English football, and in football anywhere really, where you have two teams in the same country, two great teams, who reach a concurrent peak. Like Liverpool, Nottingham Forest, perhaps, although they never quite competed for league title after league title after league title, even though they both achieved great things. And then you had, I guess, Mourinho's Chelsea and Fergie's Chelsea, but Mourinho sort of had left by then, and it was just various locums after that. But the standard of football, and not just the standard of football, but the intensity of football, where you had proper animosity between the teams, but also proper respect between the teams, so that when they played, it was an occasion. Both teams, on almost every occasion, went for it. They went to attack, and they went to be physical, and they stayed, not that they stayed the right side of the laws of the game, because they didn't, but they were in a good part of the wrong side. As in, they crossed the line, but in an entertaining, invigorating, intensifying, affirming way. And it was football played by people that really cared about playing football and had that passionate desire to beat the other team, and they got that from their managers. Wenger, he got lucky in that he inherited George Graham's back four, but he inherited George Graham's back four, and he knew enough not to get rid of them. Another bloke might have come in and thought, well, actually, these blokes are getting on a bit, and I need people that can run faster or whatever. Wenger didn't do that. He kept them because it worked, and then he bought some amazing players, and he coached them to become, or he bought some amazing talents, I guess I should say, because Patrick Vieira and Thierry Henry and Emmanuel Petit were not amazing players when you bought them, they were talents. And Wenger turned them into amazing players. You see all these lists about the greatest strikers that the Premier League's ever seen, and people usually put Alan Shearer at the top of that list. It's a load of bollocks. Thierry Henry was in a different league to Alan Shearer, scoring goal after goal after goal at clutch, and also making as many goals as he scored, and reinventing what we thought centre-forward could do, in that he basically played two positions. He played the sort of inside left, and he played centre-forward. And he scored a centre-forward quantity of goals, and he created a number 10 quantity of goals. And Wenger took him from Juventus when he was a talented player, like people had heard of him, but the player that he became was so far in excess of the player that anyone thought he could be. And of course, that's a lot to do with Thierry Henry, because if Wenger made Thierry Henry, well, why didn't he make more Thierry Henrys? But he gave him the freedom to play, and whatever he told him, it was enough to make it work. And that's what we saw from Wenger. And I think as a United supporter, people often talk about Arsenal's unbeaten season, but the achievement of Wenger's, of which I'm most envious as someone that doesn't support Arsenal, is the consecutive wins. I think it was 10 or 11 straight wins to pip United in 97-98, and 13 straight wins to win the league and to win what was a 3-horse race in 01-02. And it's much more for me about when you're evaluating greatness, it's what did your teams do at clutch when the pressure was on? And to reel off 13 straight wins, to win a 3-horse race, and also to add the cup to that, that's a phenomenal achievement. And I'm much more envious of that than I am of staying unbeaten through a season to just win one trophy. Those two runs of successive wins to win leagues are phenomenal achievements. And Wenger, if we hadn't have had Wenger, then English football would have been a lot less interesting and a lot less entertaining than it was. It was, a shame. It was kind of quite hard almost to watch him, because the reason that there wasn't this whole big story about him getting fired was because he basically spent almost 10 years getting fired. Yeah, and it was painful to watch, but I guess we're seeing quite how bad the problem was, because Unai Emery is getting so much more out of more or less the same players. But that doesn't affect Wenger's legacy in the end. What happened does affect where you would rank him in terms of the greatest managers of all time, but his legacy is in the great players and the great teams and the great rivalry that he bestowed upon English football, and his contribution there is amazing.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Daniel, it's been a great year. Thank you so much.
No, see you again. Happy Christmas, Happy New Year.
Cheers, Daniel. You too. Daniel Harris there, giving us his 5 top stories from the footballing year of 2018. We're turning our attention to rugby next. Neil Treacy is going to be with me in studio. He's picking his 10 favourite rugby players of the past 12 months.
Seems he sees his future in an administration role. Doesn't necessarily want to go back into coaching. Yeah. Doesn't want day-to-day management style. Doesn't want that. That's where he sees his future. And
I suspect he'd be good at it too, actually.
I think he probably would. But again, when your head's on the block, it's a different. United are way behind. If he took that job now, I can't see United winning the league in the next 4 or 5 years, unless they go out and get a Pochettino or whoever it's going to be that's going to go into the place and change it. He was speaking yesterday, Gary Neville. It's almost like now you've got to hit the reset button, and you're starting from scratch, and you think, right, you're sacrificing 2 years here now. Liverpool have gone through such a barren spell. United are Liverpool 20 years ago.
It feels like that.
That's exactly how they are.
It's remarkable how history repeats sometimes.
All right, you're very welcome along to the Tide 5 with Neil Treacy. Neil, how are things?
Not too bad, on.
Ready for Christmas?
Very, already, yeah.
Well, it is Christmas time, and we've got a Christmas present for everybody at home, because 5 isn't the magic number. It certainly is. God. 5 is not the magic number.
I've been cheap this year.
10 is the magic number this week, because you got your 10 best players of 2018. 10 best players maybe isn't the correct way to say it. So we're going to have a countdown of 10 players. What is the criteria?
Yeah, you suggested 10 best players to me. I hate kind of doing that. These are the 10 I think were the best, because it's all so subjective. What I'm going for today are the 10 that I enjoyed watching the most. Not necessarily the 10 best players in the world for 2018. Some of them are definitely in the top 10 best players, but there are 1 or 2 as well where I've just kind of gone, you know what, I like seeing this guy this year. I learned a lot more about him. I want to see more of him in 2019. Maybe I've started to like him a bit more. You learn more about him. And it's just that, really. And I think number 10, will we get straight into it?
Let's go for it.
Yeah, number 10 is probably ticking off that list. It's the reason I wanted to make it that, because Lima Sapawanga, former All Black, now playing with Wasps. And he's just someone that over the last year, he's a very good player. It hasn't really worked for him too well yet since he moved to Wasps. He's on big money, and he's even spoken lately about the kind of pressure he suffered ever since he moved to Wasps. But he was in Bowden Barrett's shadow for quite a long time and decided, obviously, you know what, I just need to get out of here. You're hanging around for All Black caps when there's someone who's definitely better than you who's up there. But I don't know, did you see that Amazon Prime thing, the All Blacks All or Nothing this year? I watched it, and it's grand. It's worth a watch. It's nothing groundbreaking, but Lima Sapawanga was the one guy in it that he absolutely stole the show in the entire thing. He came across at the start this real kind of when he was around other people, very cocky, the life of the party and all that. But when he was speaking one-on-one with the camera, you could just see how racked with self-doubt he was constantly. He was always questioning his own ability and things like that. It just seemed incredibly vulnerable, and it was such a human side to see from a player. And he was saying the kind of things that you rarely actually hear athletes talking about, just about how much he doubted himself at times, and waiting to get in ahead of Bowden Barrett. And during that as well, became a father as well, and you could see how much that affected him.
Probably behind his decision to actually go get more money for himself.
And he has actually said that exactly. That was part of the reason as well. But he is just one player that I just really warmed to over the last year, and I wanted to include him on this list.
Yeah.
Because I really thought he was a very interesting guy.
And I think because, of course, with all the hype ahead of the Wasps Leinster game a few months ago, he's kind of become more of a focal point on our own radar here as well, and somebody that we can watch week in, week out, which is great. Number 9 as well, somebody we've been very accustomed to, despite the fact that he's from the Southern Hemisphere. It's a Fijian at number 9.
Yeah, he is. I don't think there's a player in the world I enjoy watching more than Leona Nakarawa, Fijian second row. Tortured Irish teams for a number of years now when he was at Glasgow Warriors, now at Racing 92. European Player of the Year last year in the Champions Cup. And he's just so much fun to watch. He does everything. He's able to do the bread and butter stuff. Like last year in the Champions Cup, I was looking through it yesterday, he was only second to Peter O'Mahony in the number of lineouts, who only won 38. He was second to CJ Stander in the number of carries in the tournament on 124, and 23 defenders beaten. He was the only forward in the top 5 players for defenders beaten last year in the tournament, and offloads, 22 of them last year, which I think was the highest number for any player as well. He's just so much fun to watch. He has this way of running. I don't know what a lot of people say it as well. I know myself and a few friends at home would say it. He has this way of holding the ball. We call it walking the dog. So he kind of holds it out in one hand, almost in front of him like that. Like he's got a little dog on a leash in front of him. And he's just running around the place. He's going around a defender. He's throwing a pass in like that, or like that, all in the one hand. He's just so much fun to watch. He plays rugby the way it's meant to be played. Yeah. And I got to see him last year in the Champions Cup final in Bilbao, and seeing him in such a big game like that, it was an absolute thrill. Yeah, he's class. Number 8, I didn't expect to see Daenerys Targaryen make your list, but Khaleesi's made it at number 8. Yeah, see Khaleesi, I just think, like I said earlier on with the... You don't watch Game of Thrones, obviously. No, I don't. No, well, I've never actually seen an episode. Continue. Anyway, see Khaleesi, just an historic year, the first black South Africa Springbok captain. He just seems an incredible leader. I've seen him speaking quite a few times now, and he just comes across so impressive. And I think what I was delighted to see even more was ever since he took on the captaincy, he led on the pitch as well. He clearly wasn't just there, we have all this quota stuff in South African rugby. He wasn't there, but he wasn't chosen as a captain because he was black. And his numbers back it up in the Rugby Championship. He was in the top 8 for the number of clean breaks in that tournament, the only forward in the top 10 in that. He beat 21 defenders with the ball in hand. That was in the top 7. Only forward again in the top 10. He was the only forward in the top 10 for metres carried on 267, and he made the 3rd most tackles in the Rugby Championship as well, 67. So that to me is just 100% a captain leading by example, and I just can't imagine the amount of pressure he was probably under last summer and early in the autumn as well, taking on the Springboks, the first ever black captain. And he's got an incredible story about how he came from, pretty much from poverty. His mother died when he was incredibly young, managed to get a scholarship to a rugby playing school, and that's where he was discovered and where he grew out of. And I just thought he was absolutely phenomenal this year. And I think he symbolises as well this kind of new South African rugby team that Rassie is building, how impressive they've been over the last 6 months or so, and how far they've come. And how big a challenge they're likely to present to Ireland. To maybe Ireland, if Ireland were to top their group, and if, as we expect, South Africa were to finish second maybe to New Zealand in the Rugby World Cup. Yeah. Massive collision course there potentially in a World Cup quarter-final. We can admire them for now, but I think... in 6 months down the line, we'll try pick all the holes we can in the game. Let's hope so. It's our first Irishman at number 7. Yeah, Peter O'Mahony, one of 4 Irish players, and I think I'm carrying on maybe a little... It's a forward-dominated list when I was looking back at it this morning. But again, it's all subjective, as I said. Don't blame me for it. They're my choices. I understand if other people have different selections. No, people never have different ideas about top 10 lists of the year. Peter O'Mahony, just... What more can you say about him? He was... That performance against New Zealand at the Aviva Stadium last month, I'm struggling to remember a better performance from a single Irish player in an international game. Really? I couldn't get over it. there was a stage, I think it was about mid 50 minutes or something like that, 50, 60 minutes, and you thought, he's done. His game is over. He looked physically like he was just broken. And he plays on for another 20 minutes, makes that incredible last-ditch dive to pull the ball away 10 metres from the line. He a couple of stunning turnovers as well, and just like Sia Khaleesi as well. He's just a natural leader, leads by example. The best defensive line-out jumper in the world, I would say, at the moment. He's just incredible going up there at 2. Six Nations medal, and that story as well, like I say, leading by example. Do you remember when he had his Six Nations medal, and he gave it to what's the girl's name? She's like the Irish sports biggest fan, pretty much. He's just a complete leader as well, like on and off the field. That's when Ireland won the Six Nations, won the Grand Slam at Twickenham, and you had that wonderful image of him giving his medal to Jennifer Malone, arguably Irish sports biggest fan at the moment. She seems to be absolutely everywhere. Every player in the country seems to know her. But Peter O'Mahony and a lot of the Irish players would know her very well at this stage. And just to see him giving a medal that he had pretty much, I would say, a Grand Slam, that's something he'd been dreaming of, I'd say, since he was 5 or 6 playing rugby in Cork on. Probably even younger with how young he was inside in that club. But, to sacrifice that, something you'd obviously been working for your entire career, and to just hand it over to someone, I just think it says a lot about someone as a person. It's
a class touch, really. And it's another Irishman at number 6. A fella who 12 months ago, if you said he was going to be just outside the top 5 players or your favourite players in the world, probably wouldn't have believed you.
To give him his full title, Man of the Match, James Ryan, I think is what he's actually known as now. What he's doing at the age of 22 is just phenomenal. It really is. Consistently Man of the Match. I joked about there a second ago.
But he really is.
2 defeats in his professional career to date?
He's Leinster Player of the Year. He's had I would say he's Leinster Player of the Year ahead of the World Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm. And I think he epitomises that new breed coming through with Ireland and Leinster that really don't actually know what defeat is like. Even up until the likes of Conor Murray or Peter O'Mahony, they were probably brought up in that era where, you probably were still an underdog. And, you were slowly getting used to winning. Whereas he's coming up in this era now where winning is expected. Winning is what they're just used to. Defeat is what they're not used to. They're not used to the moral victories, the 2-3 point defeats against the bigger sides and going home happy with that. The scope for him to improve even. Just the knowledge of the game. He plays it like a 10-year veteran, I think. His complete
it's the wisdom that he has, really, in his play.
Yeah, he's not making the mistakes that a 22-year-old or even last year as a 21-year-old that those kind of players make.
Yeah.
He plays the game like he's 28, 29.
It's very, very unusual. Long way to continue, I think, when it comes to James Ryan. We're going back to Springbok number 5.
Yeah, Malcolm Marks, Springbok hooker. One of those nominated for World Player of the Year this year. Best hooker in the world, I'd say, at the moment as well. And I think he's just that perfect shape for a hooker as well. He's that short kind of squat, built like a block, broad shoulders, brilliant at getting in over the ball. I think he used to be a flanker when he was younger as well, so that's where his experience of that comes from. He only has 20-something odd caps, I think, for South Africa at this stage, but he is their de facto first choice hooker. And he plays, Clough Brody is playing in a Lions side that are brilliant to watch as well. They really, really are enjoyable to watch. And his stats in Super Rugby last year would back it all up as well. He was the 4th top try scorer in the entire tournament of 12, only forward in the top 10 on that list as well. He was 5th top try scorer in Super Rugby the season before that, with 10 of them. 2nd most turnovers of any player in the tournament last year on 27 as well. So he's like, you can see it, he's a threat near the try line. He's a threat over the ball. He's a good line-out thrower. He's very much a complete player as a hooker, I think.
Yeah, not just from set play and open play as well. I'm looking at your top 4 here now, Neil, and you say it's the 4 players you've liked the most over the year. I would say if you did a straw poll of every rugby fan around the world, these would be their 4 best players of 2018, or the 4 best players in the world right now.
Yeah, this is where we're probably coming into the territory now, into the from 5 in or something like that, where most people would kind of agree these probably are among the top 10 players in the world.
Yes, what do we got at number 4?
Number 4 of Brodie Redlich. I think he's just a complete player. He's the kind of player, I think, that if you were to say to James Ryan, who do you want to be in 5 or 6 years' time, he'd probably say, I want to be like Brodie Redlich. He's just an absolutely fantastic player. His world finished off the World Try of the Year as well. from this year's awards, and it was just brilliant because it showed everything he has in his locker in that full play. He started off the move with a short little carry inside the 22, just like picking up those kind of grunting yards, take 2-3 yards, get the ball back, play away. And all of a sudden there he is, about 30 seconds later, out on the wing, throwing a dubby, sending Bernard Foley back on his backside and running in under the post. So you can just see how comfortable he is doing the grunt and tumble, doing the dirty work, and also at the same time just how comfortable he is with the ball in hand. Like, he's probably the best second row in the world, you'd say, at the moment as well. And you could see how big an impact it was a couple of years ago, maybe, when Ireland beat New Zealand in Chicago. He wasn't there. And a lot of people spoke leading up to this game this year about how, well, Brodie Redleck's going to be back, Sam Whitelock are going to be back in the second row. This changes everything now.
Yeah.
And I think you could see how much Ireland targeted him, I think, in that game as well. Like, you remember
rumour has it
big
that
tackle from Devin Toner.
I was just about to say, apparently Redleck was in at number 1 until Devin Toner tackled him and shoved him all the way back to number 4.
Not so sure about that.
Well, I don't know. Let's give Devin Toner the credit here.
I loved that tackle though. I just thought, like,
instantly memorable.
Yeah, he's a massive target. He's a great line-out operator as well, and I think you could just see how important he was to New Zealand in the way Ireland targeted him back in November.
For sure. So we've got a top 3. We're on the podium, and there's 2 Irishmen and an All Black on the podium. And
people might be surprised because I only have one prop in my top 10.
And he's up in at number 3.
Yeah, Tadhg Furlong. I was going to pick just an entire list of props just to take the piss entirely, but I said I'd take it a bit more seriously. But Tadhg Furlong, best tight head prop in the world. I'd say best tight head prop Ireland have ever had. He's just an all-rounder, a complete all-rounder. His scrummaging is absolutely incredible. I don't think there's a loose head that can touch him at the moment, taking him on in the scrum. And we've been able to see in the last few months as well just how comfortably he is throwing the ball around. There was that great offload. Was it in the Wasps game, opening round of the Champions Cup? I think it was. Yeah. What else is there left to say? I was really disappointed he didn't make that top 5 list for shortlist for World Player of the Year, because there hasn't been a prop ever nominated in the, what are we in now, 17, 18 years of World Rugby Player of the Year. Never has there been a prop nominated. And I think if there is going to be one in the next few years, it could well be Tadhg Furlong.
It makes Keith Wood's achievement look all the more incredible that a hooker managed to actually go and win the thing.
Yeah, there have been a few hookers that have been nominated and won it as well. But even in the last few years, it's trending towards backs completely. Redleck was the last forward to win in, I think, 2014. But I just think Tadhg Furlong is just this kind of anchor in the front row that Ireland can build on over the next few years. And you can see the success in Ireland's scrum. I don't think they lost a single scrum over the 4 games of the Autumn Internationals. Granted, he wasn't playing in 2 of them now, but in the 2 ones that mattered, like against Argentina, who everyone hails as these, scrummaging innovators, and Tadhg Furlong was unbelievable that day. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he just had an amazing year. I think, I wonder, in a very perverse way, did the Lions Tour of 2017 go against his nomination for this year, where the people surveying it from abroad might have said, I haven't seen Tadhg Furlong hit the heights of the Lions Tour in 2017, whereas very quietly he's going about his business at a world-class level week after week after week.
I don't know. I think for the most part he was hitting those heights.
Because I just couldn't get over the fact that he wasn't really in the mix, but I don't know. We can leave those decisions up to other people, I guess.
Yeah.
We are down to the last 2. There's no surprises who these 2 are going to be. Take it away and tell us who's got the silver medal, and thereby confirming who's got the gold medal. I think we can all understand who the next 2 players are going to be.
Yeah, I think in the last month or so before the World Rugby Player of the Year awards, people thought it was going to be Beauden Barrett or Johnny Sexton, and I think I have to respect the voting of World Rugby on that one, because Beauden Barrett is second on the list for me, and Johnny Sexton is taking the number 1 award for 2018.
Talk us through this. Why?
Well, I had it in my head leading up to November that, in my head anyway, that they were probably neck and neck. Whoever probably won that game at the Aviva was probably going to be the one that pipped it. And so it was. And I just think, when you look back at the year Sexton has had, both for Leinster and for Ireland, 6 Nations Grand Slam, Pro 14 title, Champions Cup title, and series win down under in Australia, beating the All Blacks here, and the little moments as well. The drop goal against France.
Call that a little moment.
A little moment, yeah. The moment in the bigger moments.
Yeah.
But drop goal against France to save the Grand Slam when it was about to fall at the first hurdle. Just his all-round play, the work rate, the way he links up his back line. And we even saw it last week again against Bath, that good old Johnny Sexton wraparound move. It's still working. And it doesn't matter how many times he does it, because he has so many options available, and he just has that game intelligence where he can see what way the defenders want to move, what way they want to charge down, what options the defenders are attacking, and he's just going to give it to someone else.
He signed a decent media deal as well, I heard.
He did, and I'll say it as well, I did not choose him because he is now a colleague of us here at Off the Ball. But
I do wonder if he's going to rate being a Tide 5 Player of the Year ahead of being World Rugby Player of the Year. I presume so. I presume this is the biggest
I would
moment
imagine so. Do we have an actual award, like a physical award we're going to get?
These are your awards, Neil.
I have to supply this. There's no budget.
Out of your own pocket, we're not going to support you on this.
Just take something from around here.
We'll give him the Brazilian 2014 mascot as a prize.
I'll give him something rugby related.
Conor Murray's Lions boots from 2017 are there. We can give those as a present to Johnny Sexton.
In fairness to Conor Murray, I was so close to putting him in.
Yeah.
It was probably just the fact that he was missing for these last few months.
Recency bias.
It was. I was thinking between him and Peter O'Mahony for one of those slots, and I just had to just about give it to O'Mahony.
Let's recap your top 10. So Slima Sopoaga at number 10, Nakaraba at number 9, Khaleesi at number 8, O'Mahony at number 7, James Ryan at 6, Malcolm Marks at 5, Brody Ortalic at 4, Tyg Furlong at 3, Bowden Barrett at 2, and Johnny Sexton at number 1. That is our last Tide 5 for 2018. Plenty more to come in 2019. It's Tide 10 really today. Neil, thank you very much for your expertise for the last couple of weeks. Have a very happy Christmas.
You too, Will.
Thank you very much. And there's some more good stuff from last night's show coming up next. And then we're going to be giving you all your culture tips for Christmas 2018.
Briefly then, what about Carbery's performance beyond the kicking?
I thought he lacked a bit of gravitas in his game. I mean, he got befuddled one time and he ran kind of the cul-de-sac, got turned over. He was just kind of almost like, he was distributing the ball well, but he wasn't the same threat as you normally expect from him. He didn't kind of had the game by the scruff of the neck and drive it on. And look, he has a very experienced scrum half inside him in Conor Murray. But at the end of the day, like, the 10 is the guy who drives the bus, you know. He's the 9 can help and take pressure off him and move the strike point and keep the fringe uncomfortable and stuff, but it's the 10 that runs the show. And I think Carbery needs to step up in that area, like, and just grab the game by the scruff of the neck when the chips are down. It's easy to do it when things are going well, or when you're at home in front of a big crowd and everyone's playing well. Well, the key is for a 10 is to dig you out of a hole. And if he wants to step into the pantheon of Irish fly halves that he could possibly do, he's got plenty of guys to look at in terms of, we'll say, Jonathan Sexton is that type of player who steps in when it's on. Ron McGarrett's done it before him, you know. So that's what he needs to get to. He's not there yet, but look, he's on a journey, and there'll be days like this. But there was a big price on Saturday, because had they won on the weekend, it would have made life a lot simpler. As already pointed out there, this is going to be a dogfight to the bitter end, and not something they probably need to be involved in when they didn't have to.
You're very welcome along to a special OTB AM. We've given you plenty of recommendations for Christmas presents, but we haven't given you any recommendations yet for any culture to watch over Christmas, except for, all our conversations about books and sports books during the year. Except this one is a very special panel where we're not going to be talking about sport unless our esteemed panellists decide to do so. We've got Sue, we've got Nathan, we've got Tommy here. Folks, you're very welcome.
Happy Christmas, all.
Very Merry Christmas to you as well. Let's start with Christmas. Let's start with Christmas content. 2 questions. Best Christmas movie, best Christmas film. We want to hear yours as well. Tweet us at Off the Ball. Sue, we'll start with you. What's your favourite Christmas movie?
Elf.
Stealing my content here.
Elf. You didn't write it down.
I didn't write it down.
It's not my fault.
Thank you. Elf is indeed the best Christmas movie.
It is the most fun. It's definitely, and Will Ferrell is absolutely amazing in it.
It's been overdone a little bit.
No.
I do enjoy Elf, but it's become some sort of annoying hipster movement.
Hipster?
I have a confession
That's
to
what I
make.
mean. It's become so hipster. It's become overly mainstream, and everybody knows the quotes. It's a very good movie. I do enjoy it. I will watch it, but it's not the best Christmas movie. I'd much prefer, maybe because I watched Home Alone the other day again.
Oh yeah, Home Alone is great.
Home Alone I could sit. My problem right now is with all of these is, ever since I've had kids, my life is just nostalgia. So I don't watch anything new. I don't read anything new. I don't listen to anything new.
How is it nostalgic? Are they watching?
I don't bother trying to keep up with anything anymore. I just go back in time to when I was in a happy place and listen, watch, and read all those things again.
It's not a bad life. You said you never seen Elf.
Yeah.
What?
Exclusively reveal on OTBAM this morning that I've never seen the movie Elf. Yeah, it's on the list for this month. I'm going to watch this month. Watching a few Christmas movies.
You're in for such a treat, though.
I know, yeah, I've seen the trailer this last week as well. I don't know how I've never seen it.
Where did you see the trailer for it?
Because I was trying to be convinced to watch it. We had a choice.
Who was trying to convince you?
She was trying to convince me.
And how come the persuasion didn't get to the point of actually watching it?
I said we'll watch Elf a bit closer to Christmas because I knew I had to watch it.
Question for you: when is the latest you're allowed to watch a Christmas movie?
Well, what?
Latest.
Wait, you know you're talking about Christmas movies here, right?
Yes.
Are you talking about just movies with a bit of snow in them and a bit of...
Does Santa need to be involved?
Santa has to be involved.
Not talking about Scarface.
Are we talking about... or are we talking about... We've had moments of that before here, haven't we? Are we talking about movies that are watched at Christmas?
Like Love Actually? Well, Love Actually is a Christmas
I
movie.
watched Love Actually there last night, actually.
is one of the ones. Willy Wonka, I suppose, is a Christmas
Back to
movie.
the Future.
It's a movie at Christmas. Back to the Future is a movie at Christmas.
Yeah.
They're all movies, but it's not a Christmas movie.
Okay.
Like Christmas Spirit.
What's the criteria here?
Well, you didn't answer my question.
What's the criteria?
What is the latest?
I'd say maybe
December.
December 28th, 29th.
That's even too late.
Is
Like
it?
Too
once
late.
Stephen's Day is gone, you're finished.
Once Christmas Day arrives, it's too late.
probably
Because
is.
the single biggest purpose you watch a Christmas movie is to get excited for Christmas.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's Christmas morning and you're watching a Christmas movie and you're like, oh no, this whole thing is really underwhelming. This thing that I'm watching this movie to get excited for, and I'm really underwhelmed by the whole experience.
No, I think you could watch, say, Back to the Future or
Well, that's
something
not a
like that
Christmas movie.
on
It doesn't fall
December
into it.
28th.
But
Early morning,
you
get
could
up.
definitely get away with like It's a Wonderful Life on Stephen's Day.
Not for me.
Are you
No, it's a Christmas morning, 11 o'clock. Just watch The Snowman. Just watch The Snowman.
I have another revelation.
You haven't seen what?
No, It's a Wonderful Life.
You haven't seen it?
I don't know how I haven't seen
it's
it.
literally on
I know,
every year.
But you know what I actually realised as well?
Channels at the same time.
I also realised this week that I'd never seen the full Love Actually. I'd seen like loads of different versions, I came into it halfway through maybe 6 times, but I'd actually never seen the full
Why is
thing.
it here?
Like it's
I
really
drafted it at the last minute.
your contribution is really insignificant so far.
I've got some good stuff coming up, don't worry.
What's your favorite Christmas song?
My favourite Christmas song?
Please don't say the Pogues.
No, it's not the Pogues. It's Driving Home for Christmas. Not that I
that's
can
a good one.
drive, but I like it.
But that's got a limited time frame as well, though.
Yeah, I know, and I like it the week before it. We have an awful problem in this office.
Like the couple of days.
I only
before
like it
Christmas.
when I used to go down to Mayo for Christmas.
Yeah.
My tradition was
Same
get in the
thing
car
before.
about 2 o'clock, Christmas Eve, Tony Fenton on the radio, blasting out the hits, and about 4 o'clock he'll play Driving Home for Christmas, and I go, yeah. Get me to Paddy Phillips's for my Christmas Eve pints.
It's kind of deep vibe.
Happy
to it as well.
place.
I can sing along. Kind of like that about it.
What you've got?
I can get away with
singing.
singing.
It's great.
Not at all,
away
but I can
with
get
singing.
away with singing along with it. Like,
Okay, that's
So,
it's
kinda important to me.
reasons any. What's your favorite Christmas song, Nathan?
I do like Driving Home for Christmas. Bit of Mariah Carey at the right time of night wouldn't go astray. First single I ever bought,
was it?
E17. Stay Another Day.
You're really showing your age here.
90s boy.
Yeah.
Our age, collectively.
Was that Christmas number 1? What, 95?
Yeah.
But
Was
it's
it
not a
94?
Christmas song.
95, I think.
Well, they did. I'm fairly sure.
Snow music video.
I'm fairly sure they did originally release that song.
Yeah, and then
re-released it with bells attached, quite literally.
Did you? So you bought a tape, I presume it was.
No, it was CD.
A CD.
CD.
What the first record you ever bought was a CD?
70.
Yeah.
The first record I ever bought was a tape.
Well, you lived in Kerry.
That's a good point. How is that possible? What year is this?
Well, that's what I'm saying. E17 was either 94 or 95.
There were CDs in 94, 95.
I didn't know.
What?
I really thought CDs were turn of the
come
century.
on,
When did you buy a tape?
CDs were around from the early 90s.
Eminem's Curtain Call was the first record I bought, and it was a tape, a cassette tape.
But that was about
Oh my
2003.
god, I have
Yeah.
such an image of Owen trying to sing Eminem.
What?
I did not know CDs were a thing in the 90s.
CDs were the 90s.
Pretty sure they were.
From the early 90s.
I didn't have a word.
First album I bought was like REM Monster on CD, 1994.
I really thought it was like if the 80s were vinyl, the 90s were cassette tapes, maybe a little bit of the 2000s, and then come 2005, then everything's CD really. And then 4 or 5 years later, then iPods take over.
Are you taking the piss?
I'm being 100% serious.
iPods. I had an iPod in 2007.
Maybe I'm
2006.
like
You're a couple of years off.
a couple of years off, but you know what I'm trying to say.
My reference points aren't great either.
No, CDs were available en masse in Ireland from at least 1990, if not earlier.
I'll take
I would
your
have
word
thought cassettes were extinct by the year 2000.
Why the hell is somebody
Except
getting me
unless you were buying them again in a sort of hipster way.
Was it a Christmas present?
No, I think it was just...
You bought Eminem Curtain Call on tape.
Well,
on tape?
After a lengthy battle with my mother to allow me to actually purchase one that had explicit content. Yeah, it's a shite album anyway, so terrible music taste. What did you say there? Oh, Mariah.
Yeah.
What's your favourite Christmas song?
I'm gonna have to go Mariah as well. I love Mariah. Now I actually but I do love Mariah. So we were at a wedding 2 years ago, and Mariah Carey came on, and I couldn't find my husband anywhere in the building, and threw a massive strap, and we ended up fighting for the rest of the night because he wouldn't dance with me for Mariah Carey.
Jeez, that's...
It is absolutely my favourite.
That's Mick in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who doesn't dance to Mariah Carey?
He was drinking all my friends. He was like, I was trying to get to know your friends, and I was like giving it shit to him.
And what Christmas song would have got him on the floor?
Pogues, I'd say.
Pogues is the most overrated piece of art that's ever happened.
Really? Not. That's
come on.
No,
there's a time and a place for it.
We like it because it's a part...
Come on.
There's a time and a place for it.
There's a time and a place for everything.
But there's a week where the Pogues is good.
No,
it's a grand song. It's a good song, I'll give you that. But I just don't understand why list after list after list it's always number one. Like as if it's the undisputable champ.
Because it's a brilliant song. It's not just a brilliant Christmas song.
It's a grand song.
No, it's a brilliant song.
It's a grand song.
No.
So what, they put in a bit of trad music in the middle of it, and suddenly it kind of transforms.
The lyrics are amazing.
The lyrics are good, yeah. It's a good song, I'll give you that.
I don't know what you were talking about. You bought Curtain Call as your first album.
Yeah, it's terrible.
What's your favourite Christmas song?
My favourite Christmas song is, I said this before on the radio and Nathan and Jared never heard of it. Because of the bass line, it's Christmas Rapping by the Waitresses.
Oh, we did play it.
Yeah.
We did play it.
Banger of a tune.
Is it?
So typically going to go that hipster, isn't it?
It's not that hipster. It's
Literally nobody's ever heard of it.
I've never heard of it.
I've heard of it.
Tommy,
We're playing a Longitude last summer.
There we go. Tommy getting one back on his crappy quiz intros. We'd love to know your favourite Christmas song, as long as it's not the Pogues. Tweet us at Off the Ball. You can comment on the stream as well if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. The main purpose that we're here, despite the fact we spent 20 minutes talking about Christmas songs, is to talk about non-Christmas media, because, as I said, the likes of Back to the Future, any sort of series, anything like that, now is the time that you actually have in your hands to get stuck into this sort of thing. So we're going to give you a few recommendations. Sue, we'll start with you, the culture hound among us, the culture expert on News Talk, on Off the Ball. Go for it, shoot.
My TV recommendation, if you haven't seen it this year, is Succession. I don't know if you guys saw it.
The HBO show.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it, no, but I heard it's great.
What's it about?
Kind of, Brian Cox is kind of this, he owns a media empire, and his kids are all trying to get rid of him so that they can take over the
Scientist?
No, he's an actor. Not Brian Cox, the scientist. That would be interesting. No. Kieran Culkin actually got a Golden Globe nomination. He plays his son in it, but it's brilliant because in the first episode he gets really sick, and they all think, great, I'm in here and going to own this massive company and be a millionaire. And then he gets better and he tries to get back into his own company. All of his kids are trying to get rid of him. It's just brilliant because you're on the edge of your seat for the entire thing. It's on Sky Atlantic and it was on Sky Box, but honestly, one of the best series I've seen in a long time.
How long is every episode?
About an hour. I think it's an hour. It's an HBO show, so I'd say it's an hour, yeah, and it's 10 of them.
Right, so 10
and
so
we
far.
flew, like, don't do the whole thing where you fly through it because it's just too good. Like, give yourself the time to actually process every episode because there's so much going on with each of the characters, and they all have their own lives and their own relationships as well. So it's just super. It's really, really good.
It's like Game of Thrones but without the violence, or Game of Thrones but it's political only.
There's a little violence in there. There's a little violence. They're really underhanded, mean, horrible people. Like, you wonder why you're watching it going, why am I rooting for any of these people? They're all horrible. But it's just so, it's really mesmerising, and Kieran Culkin is fantastic. He literally doesn't have 1 ounce of moral fibre in his body. He doesn't care about anyone except himself. It's so brilliant.
Sounds like an admirable.
Right down your alleyway.
Yeah, right. Like I've shot at this down right now, and I've
It's
had
brilliant. You love it. It's so good. I'm surprised you haven't seen it actually.
Yeah, so am I. What else?
What I would recommend for anybody who's sitting down thinking I'm catching up on box sets over the Christmas period, do not watch the latest series of House of Cards.
I knew you were going to say that.
Really?
Oh,
Did you get to the end of it though?
I got to the end of it. The most deeply frustrating series. There's a 10-minute spell where I thought this is all about to kick off. Yeah. This is going to be worthwhile, and it just falls flat. I know you want to see the end of it. I know you want to see how it all actually comes to a conclusion. Don't bother.
Really?
Yeah.
Do not bother. It is.
What season is that now?
Most disappointing.
What season is that now?
Is that 5 or 6?
Yeah. I didn't get past season 3.
I think.
Season 3, that was it.
Well, the first two seasons are brilliant. I started watching it quite late. Started watching it all earlier this year. But at the time, everyone was like, "Oh, seasons 3 and 4, it loses the run of itself completely." But that was before Trump. So actually, by the time Trump came along, seasons 3 and 4 seemed quite realistic.
Yeah. I remember thinking.
Whereas at the time, it was like, this would never happen. Whereas actually, by then, it was fine. But the final season, do not sit down and watch it.
It's so disappointing because Robin Wright is brilliant. She's a great
She's
actress.
Not as good without Kevin Spacey alongside her.
Do you think so? I thought she was good in the first couple of episodes, but I was like, I'm not buying this presidential thing anymore.
No,
How are you president?
Yeah, it jumped over many sharks. The best box set I watched this year, I think it was from last year though, was Big Little Lies.
Oh yeah?
Was definitely the show I enjoyed the most.
Why?
It's quite an affecting show. The ending is spectacularly good.
Yeah.
The soundtrack is off the scale. I probably listened to more music from that soundtrack and through that soundtrack than anything else. And it just builds nicely. The acting is brilliant all the way through. The storyline is quality. It's once you start, you get hooked on it very, very quickly. And it's only 6 episodes, maybe 8 episodes.
It's good mystery. Like you're hanging on at the end.
It is. At the end, you have no idea what's coming. It has a proper dramatic twist. But I think the music makes it. So watch it and then get the soundtrack.
That's a bit of a theme. You were saying that the only reason you guys listen to music anymore is because you hear something in a movie. You basically want to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
You 2 old people in the room.
Basically, yeah.
Honestly, that's how I.
Well, I listened to my Spotify told me my Spotify end of year. The only new thing I listened to, I think, was Leon Bridges.
What was your minutes listened to?
Like 25,000 or something.
More than me.
Oh, I don't know how many it was.
Something like that.
Mine was Imagine Dragons. Is that really embarrassing?
That is humiliating.
It's actually.
Well,
troubling.
I know, but like we went to see the Boston Red Sox play, and you know the way they had the Batten song. So one of them was Thunder, and it was great in the stadium. I was like, this is brilliant.
Thunder came up a lot in sport this year. That was the NBC commentator when Patrick Reed was walking down the final fairway at the Masters. Was like, and his favourite band is Imagine Dragons. You know that song that goes like Thunder, 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 Thunder. It was like one of the commentary moments of the year.
Jim Nance, was it?
It was who?
Wasn't Jim Nance doing that, was it?
I think it might have been.
No.
I think it might have been Jim Nance.
Jim.
Tell me, what do you got?
I've watched it recently. The Sinner. Have any of you seen it? It's on Netflix at the minute. It's sitting there in your.
I saw the first series
popular
with Jessica Biel.
You weren't too sure about it.
I couldn't warm to her. No,
I don't think you're meant to warm to her.
Well, there is that.
That's the thing about it. It's actually, it's like one of those. Did you watch True Detective?
Yeah.
I was obsessed with
That's the first season, not the second. Second season was
Second
awesome.
isn't great, but the first, it's not good at all. But the first season is absolutely unbelievable.
Brilliant.
But it's like that. It's like you're watching this TV show and you don't know who you're supposed to hate. You don't know what the hell is going on, and you're there trying to figure it out as you're watching it, and it's just you get drawn in by it. I thought it was really good and really smartly done, and I think actually Jessica Biel is quite good in it.
It is again. It's perfect.
It gets under your skin.
Box set because it's pretty
You
addictive.
just want to keep watching it.
What do you feel about? So, say The Sinner. There's a new series out now, but it's a completely different cast. Sort of like what True Detective did.
Yeah.
Sort of like the American True Crime Story.
Yeah,
I
watched both.
I like that.
I watched both and it works.
I think it gives it a new life, because sometimes they get to the end of that story, it's like that story is finished. Stop trying to drag the arse out of it like Lost. Like just let it go.
Well, with The Sinner, with season 1, so you have this one story, and it's like it's an like it's you don't know what the hell is going on until towards the end. You start to figure it out. Then it's really good, and it's worth watching it through. And then season 2 is just a completely different story.
Yeah.
And like the detective is the only person who's the same person in it. So it's like it's not that tenuous a link. Like your man just gets kind of drafted in a few months later into another weird case.
I did like the detective actually.
Bill Pullman, isn't it? Is that? Yeah. So like he's really good, and his story they get more into his story in the second season and why he is the way he is. So it's good. I would recommend it.
It's a good shout. There's a bit of a grim theme going on here. It's like a sense
I finished watching Striking Out last night on RTE, which is their new Stuart Carolyn sort of love-hate style series.
I liked the first episode. I didn't get a chance to
really good.
Did you enjoy it?
Really enjoyed it.
Why? What's the official review?
No, I haven't seen it. I was watching Taken Down. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Wait, is that not the same thing? What do I call it?
Striking Out.
Oh, shite. What's Taken Down?
Taken Down is the one where the girl dies.
Balls, that's what I was watching. What's Striking Out?
Striking Out is the one with Amy Hooper.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, isn't it?
Well, that's her last one.
And I was like,
I didn't
think it was that
I'm
dark.
sure that's really, really good as well.
I didn't like Taken Down.
Oh, I really enjoyed Taken Down. Striking Out I haven't seen, but I'm sure it's great.
I felt like in Love Hate, once they introduced the police, it wasn't as good a series. And then they decided to go completely with a police story for Taken Down. And about 3 episodes in, I was like, I'm not feeling this at all. I felt like it was really forced, but I've seen a lot of people talking about the last episode saying that it was really great.
Last episode's great.
Yeah.
I just think it's worth watching to
it's an interesting
purely an insight into direct provision and the shit that goes on in Dublin.
They really researched it, yeah.
So we've absolutely stacked you with television suggestions.
Sorry.
I've got a fun one.
What?
The Good Place.
Can I jump in? Oh, you actually recommended it to me, and I'm not sure yet. I'll come back to that. Gavin and Stacey. I started watching it from the start, and it's absolutely unbelievable.
It's like a revelation.
But it is.
Gavin and Stacey, is this a...
I heard there was
where's it based?
He's done fairly well for himself after that.
Oh, yeah?
I know, okay, I get it, right? I had seen episodes here and there, but I'd never sat down and watched it from start to finish, all 3 seasons and the Christmas special. It's absolutely unbelievable.
The Christmas special. The depressing thing about that is I laugh. Yes, come 2 o'clock in the morning on Stephen's night. Who'll be sitting up watching Gavin and Stacey on Dave for 2 hours?
What's occurring?
Is it the funniest show you've ever
That's
seen?
the worst What's Occurring I've ever
Sorry,
heard.
no, I can't do it. Is it the funniest show I've ever seen? No, but it's just so enjoyable. Like, it was just so enjoyable to just chill out and watch it.
So we've got the Sinner and we've got Gavin and Stacey off you. I was going to give like a suggestion kind of along the mystery line there, but it's not a TV show. I kind of feel like I'm going to get ostracised here because I'm not a complete TV junkie like you. It's a book, actually.
Oh, right.
I'm not. Some of you probably read it. It's very famous. It's In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Best mystery book you're ever likely to read.
I actually haven't. I've never read it.
But I won't give away the plot, obviously, because that'll just completely destroy it. Basically, imagine this. You know who's committed the murder, and you know who's been murdered pretty much from the very outset. Okay. So that would initially suggest that, well, what am I reading this for? The reason why you're reading it is because you don't know why. You really just don't know why. And by the end, it'll become apparent why. And it's all based on a true story. Yeah. So the author actually spends time with these murderers when they're behind bars and gets inside their head. It is absolutely fantastic and better than all of your TV shouts because books are better than television.
I've no doubt about that.
Except for online television,
but
of course.
While we all just laughed at Tommy's suggestion of Gavin and Stacey, I would imagine all the literary heads are laughing at you for suggesting
a book that's about 50
In Cold Blood.
Yeah, basically.
When did you read it?
What?
When did you read it?
Last year.
And if you're looking for some music, the Best of the Beatles is out.
Well, that's a good suggestion. The best of the Beatles. Well, actually, no, Beatles are crap. No, not really.
Owen has it on tape.
Yeah, I have it on cassette tape. Okay, I'm going to take my beating here in this one. Maybe I should have gone a little bit more modern. So we didn't discuss what we were going to talk about here before we came on today. Now it seems that everybody's gone for something that's 2018, except for Gavin and Stacey and I. And now I look like a right mug. So that's the way it is, and I'm completely fine with that. But
what's your best sports book of the year, considering you read them all?
The Puncher. The Fighter.
The Puncher. Oh, covered
it's not even The Fighter, it's Fighter. No definite or indefinite article by Andy Lee. For me, that was the best sport.
I read it as well. It's absolutely brilliant. It's really well written.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really good one if, like, I don't know, some people find the task of reading a little bit arduous for Fighter. That is not the case whatsoever. Maybe it helps that it's short chapters. It helps that it's really, really well written. It helps that it's very interesting subject matter, both in boxing and outside of boxing. And it's fantastic read. Absolute banker if you're just looking for a good sports book to read this Christmas. I think we've got more TV shows to go through.
I have a load, but I'm trying to pick which is the best one. I think, can I go with 2 really quick? Yeah. I'm going to do it. The Bodyguard that was on BBC this year. I don't know if you guys saw it.
I've heard the first episode is...
I'm here for the recommendation.
The first episode is unreal.
So to have 20 minutes of the first episode at start is the most tense TV I've ever seen in my life.
Where can I watch this?
Brilliant.
Though?
You can get it on box. You can buy it on box set. So the BBC always release these afterwards, but it's so hard to get a hold of it in the player. But I would honestly recommend buying it. Like, I would spend money and watch it again. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. So it's the guy who plays Rob Stark, I can't remember his name is in real life. He's a bodyguard to the Home Secretary in the UK, and she's kind of trying to make a play for power to be the Prime Minister, but there's a lot of terror threats and terror attacks that she's dialing up a little bit to make her look a little bit better in terms of the police force and security and stuff. But he is her bodyguard and he's trying to protect her, but at the same time is very torn because he did serve in some of the wars and he doesn't know how he quite feels about serving her because she's trying to just bring everything under control. It is so tense, and it is one of the biggest twists in halfway through the season that I've ever seen. I wasn't expecting at all. It's so good, and you won't see it coming at all, and then you're like, really?
Well, I will now.
What the hell? No, you won't.
You're waiting for it.
No, it's just, and honestly, the conclusion and the way they ended it and everything.
Was it all a dream?
It was Oh my God, no, chair or anything, no. But the last episode, like, again, the last half an hour of it was just so tense. And I was like, how are they going to pull this out for the last half an hour and you're on the edge of your seat? It's just brilliant.
Right, nice
brilliant
one.
TV.
That
and the other one
good.
is The Good Place.
The Good Place. What's The Good Place?
Have you... I was talking to you about this.
So I'm like nearly at the end of the first season.
No, it's on Netflix.
Yeah, it's
so
what is
good.
it? Kristen Bell.
It's Kristen Bell, and Kristen Bell. She of Frozen fame, but she finds that she's dead and she's in the good place.
That happens.
Yeah, so she wakes up and it's like, welcome to the good place. And she's like, okay.
Is Ted Danson in it?
Ted Danson is the guy who's in charge of the good place.
I was flicking through the channels the other night and E4 was on, and it must be on E4 as well.
It must be because
it must be just starting, and he was acting as some sort of godlike figure.
He's in charge of all of it, and basically she's had a really good life, but halfway through the first episode you found out she hasn't had a good life and she's in the wrong place. And she's trying to make sure that she can stay in the good place the entire time, and they have all these flashbacks to how bad a person she was in real life. It is so funny. It's really, really good. But you'll end up watching like 5-6 episodes.
Yeah, they're like 20-minute episodes. They just roll into each other,
flying through it.
I'm not going to lie, the 3 TV shows I want to watch the most so far are Succession, Bodyguard and The Good Place. It's almost as if you should be a professional TV reviewer on News Talk or something.
I'm not
What's Big Little Lies?
Gavin Stacey.
You might be a bit young.
Why would I be a little bit young for Big Little Lies?
I think it's kind of aimed a bit more at middle-aged people.
If it was Small Little Lies, I'd be young enough for a disaster.
I don't think so. It's a good mystery. Maybe like they are married couples and how they survive is a major part of the story. But no, I still think its mystery is good enough to get through it.
Be an education for Owen.
Nathan, what else have you got?
It's interesting.
Book-wise, Tiger Woods' book.
From this year,
I was wondering how long we were going to get through this segment.
It's gone under the radar.
It
hasn't.
It's in a wider spectrum.
Over the last few weeks, so I suppose because we spend so much time this time of the year talking about Irish sports books because of the various awards that are on, that maybe some of the better foreign sports books get overlooked. This was probably the most enjoyable sports book I read this year. Tony 10 was arguably the best sports book I read, in that I read it in 24 hours. You just could not put it down.
Really?
And obviously an unbelievably grim story that I would recommend anybody could read. But Tiger's book is sensational. Just the level of detail and research that has gone into it. My wife would be the biggest sports fan. I spent so long telling her every little story. Eventually she was like, I'm just going to read it myself. And also thought it was outstandingly good.
Talking about Tiger Woods all the time.
Well, yeah, I can very much imagine that.
Tiger Woods.
Mayo and Tiger Woods, yeah.
It's the anecdotes. There's just such detail in the anecdotes. They've spoken to, it seems, pretty much everybody around his life, aside from the 3 or 4 or 5 people closest to him, which gives us probably a bit more depth in terms of truth, because everybody that close to him is never going to say anything even slightly negative. The most arrogant, rude man you could ever meet, but you have a huge degree of sympathy with him throughout it because his father was such an asshole. You constantly think, well, that's his dad. Now maybe you're giving him too much leeway there. But
how many Tiger Woods books have you read?
I think I've only maybe read one other one.
Okay.
But you wouldn't be a huge Tiger Woods fan then. You wouldn't really be up there.
Well, I'm not sure there's many great Tiger Woods books that have been written.
I mean,
this is the definitive.
How much Tiger content have you consumed? How do you know? Like, how do you judge it at being better than everything else?
I'm not saying. Well,
do you know more about him now?
Like, surely you knew loads of those stories already, don't know?
Not really. Like the stuff about him going and sharing a house with Mark O'Meara, who it seems is one of the nicest men in the world, at the Masters, and the woman whose house they're renting comes in, and obviously she sees Tiger, she's like, Tiger, lovely to meet you, and he literally just turns his back on her and walks away. You had an idea from other books, Hank Haney's book, as to Tiger's stinginess and scrounginess, where Tiger would sit on the couch playing computer games and would get up and get himself an ice cream and come back and sit down beside Hank and at no stage go, would you like one? To that level. Tiger out for dinner with a load of Marines who just spent the weekend training him, and they're all waiting for Tiger to get the bill, and it just doesn't happen.
That's insane.
But he was brought up by his father to a sense of massive entitlement.
Yeah.
What would bring you more happiness in 2019? Mayo winning in All Ireland or a Tiger winning the Masters?
Oh, Mayo winning in All Ireland.
How close would Tiger be after that?
No, it's no comparison.
No.
I can disappear for a month if Mayo win. I'll probably still have to come to work on the next day if Tiger wins the Masters.
That's a good show. What's the name of the Tiger Woods book?
Just Tiger.
Okay.
Just Tiger.
Tiger. And Tony 10, a little recommendation. What's your... Tommy, we'll go to you first before...
My book recommendation.
Or what's your next recommendation?
My next recommendation. Has anyone... I'm allowed to recommend a podcast?
Yes.
Has anyone heard the Aaron Hernandez Spotlight one?
No, this is only recently out.
Boston Globe one.
Boston Globe Spotlight, Aaron Hernandez. Have you seen it? No.
Spotlight, yeah.
Listen to it, it's really, really good. Really, really good. It's all just it's done by the Spotlight team in the Boston Globe, and I heard bits and pieces of a story. You're aware of who he is, obviously, and you hear bits and pieces of a story. But they've a real dive into what went wrong in his life and some of the people who may be at fault for what happened in roundabout ways to him and where he ended up. It's just really interesting. Really interesting.
Sounds
it's done really well.
Perfect for the festive season.
Again, it's grim. Absolutely grim. But Gavin and Stacey has brought me back from it.
I would just like to kind of self-congratulate us here on creating the grimmest Christmas list possible.
The Good Place is funny.
Can I?
Well, they're all dead, but it's funny.
Yeah.
I have a recommendation for Nathan. The Christmas Chronicles on Netflix is actually really good.
I haven't watched it yet.
Really good.
It's really good.
This is the Irish movie, is it?
No,
it's not.
Russell Kirk.
Oh, sorry, I have watched this. Yeah, I watched it. The whole way through, I was like, have we hit the wrong movie? Because this is absolutely terrible, but it's so bad. It was good. Been quite good.
No, I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was really enjoyable.
The little elves are brilliant.
Really good. I thought he was a great Santy.
He was a very good Santy.
Is that a TV series or is it a movie?
No, it's just a movie. It's on that. It's like a Netflix original. It's good though. It's good.
It's the first time I've seen a Christmas movie in a long time and gone, that's actually not quite bad.
It's a bit of crack.
You know some of the bad ones that come out, like Christmas Prince and all those. Jesus Christ.
I haven't seen them now.
Podcast series I enjoyed was Revisionist History.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Because again, it's not a series, so you can just delve in and out. They're quite short. They're only 25 minutes, half an hour. He has an incredibly interesting voice, Malcolm Gladwell. So they sort of fly by. The sports one is the
Will Chamberlain one.
I haven't listened
to
that.
And the free throw. The art of the free throw.
The sports one I thought you were referring to was the golf one.
I haven't actually listened to that one.
Which is what sort of started me off from a story we had spoken about on Golf Weekly, which was about the only piece of green land really in LA are the golf clubs and how they get away without paying any tax. And he does a brilliant piece on it, how they had basically rezoned the land years after year upon year upon year, that somehow, because the Riviera, where they play the LA Open, which is one of the main events of the PGA Tour, you look at it, it's right in the middle of Beverly Hills. And you think, there's no public parks in Beverly Hills. How much is this worth? And I reckon it could be worth up on maybe $1 billion, and the tax on that should be about $100 million a year, which would mean obviously they could never afford to pay that as a members club. But he goes into detail as to how they've avoided doing that over the last sort of 50 years.
No, that's just interesting.
Again, sounds perfect for Christmas.
Yeah.
Just bring it back a little bit.
What are you looking for? What are you looking for?
I really don't know. I really don't know.
People are going to have spare
The happiness
time.
comes from spending time with your family.
It's
I
true.
got dropped in at the last minute here.
Well,
I haven't had a year to get built up.
You did say I don't know what I'm looking for. It's an excellent suggestion, Nathan. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to go and listen to that particular episode.
What's your next recommendation?
To be honest with you, I haven't really prepared any recommendations. Well, I'm hosting this thing. It's up to you to kind of bring.
I have a load of
bring the
movies.
knowledge. I've got one. When you're talking about Christmas movies, that kind of feel festive but aren't an actual Christmas movie. It's so easy to say, turn on Love Actually there, or turn on The Holiday there, or something like that.
The Holiday, great movie.
Saw The Holiday.
It's so
But
bad.
it's perfect. 11 o'clock, Stephen's night.
That's the thing.
It's
It is. It's
woeful.
handy. If
If you're looking
really
for something
bad.
else at 11 o'clock this Stephen's night, and again, it's kind of not on Gavin and Stacey level of popularity, it's fairly popular in case you haven't seen it. I think it's the best rom-com ever made. About Time.
Oh, it's not a rom-com. It's
very
a
funny.
drama, but it's so sad.
His father is...
Is About Time
Gleeson.
not the movie with the terrible Irish accents?
No, it's one of Donald Gleeson's and Rachel
Donald
McAdams.
Gleeson, yeah.
That's the Amy Adams one.
About Time is Daenerys
watchable.
Targaryen.
No.
Yes.
No.
That's
That's
you
another
and me.
one. That's
You
what?
before me.
You and me.
Okay.
So I'm just going to sit here naming all the films you think.
Right, so just tell me who's in About
I
Time.
actually just forgot that Daenerys Targaryen, what she looked like. It's Donald Gleeson and Rachel McAdams.
Yeah,
yes.
It is good. It's very watchable.
It's brilliant.
So
it's very
get your
sad.
Love Actually this Christmas, watch that instead.
so
broaden
lovely.
your rom-com horizons this Christmas.
Answer me this.
Fairly popular.
Boom, you'll-
I did just clarify before I said it.
Okay.
It's going to be just like Gavin and Stacey.
Sue is going to give me a disgusted look, I'm sure. I've never seen any of the Star Wars movies.
Okay, we need to
Like
cancel
when
this
people
now.
say things
Get
like
out.
that, it actually physically hurts.
I have said to my eldest son that we are going to sit down and
that's a
start
great
watching
idea.
some of them, because
Start at 4 though.
he has also been denied this pleasure, and obviously he's mad into his Lego and is looking at these Star Wars things, but doesn't know what any of them are.
Big admission to make. I love the Star Wars prequels. Episode
1,
1.
2 and 3?
Episode 1 is my favourite Star Wars movie.
You're not a real Star
Episode
Wars.
one
So where
is
should
my-
I start?
Episode 1.
But if I start on 1,
No,
is
you
it
don't
going to
start
go
at
in
1. Don't
chronological
start at 1.
order?
You have to start at 4. You have to start at
You
4.
do have to start at 4 in fairness.
And
Start-
go where? 4, 5?
4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
And then the
Okay.
new ones.
No, you can be crazy and do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Don't do that.
No, you're not a real Star Wars fan.
No.
But The Phantom Menace, again, we talk about underrated stuff. Phantom Menace right
Are
up
you
there.
telling me a film with Jar Jar Binks in it is actually a good film?
Yes.
No.
Jar Jar Binks
You're
is a great
incredibly
character.
wrong.
Not a depth
the
to
only
that
good thing
character.
about that is Qui-Gon Jinn.
And Darth Maul.
Darth Maul's
And
pretty
Liam
good.
Neeson.
We have.
But that's like 5-10 minutes of the film. That's it. Jar Jar Binks being an absolute prat and bringing down the whole universe.
Nothing wrong with
That's
a
what
prat.
puts me off watching it.
I'm sure there's a few prats in succession as well.
I'll have to have these terrible conversations.
Is that it?
Any good sports documentaries?
Have you seen the Jared one?
No, it looks terrible.
Did you see it? No.
I started watching the Bobby Robson documentary on Netflix last night,
Yeah,
which
that's alright.
is pretty promising on the first half an hour. And also, that Sunderland documentary is out
Is it good?
next week.
Yeah.
Or around this week, maybe, on Netflix, which is meant to be excellent.
Heard
A
it's really
proper look at how a football club runs. If you're thinking about watching the Manchester City documentary, don't bother. Unless you're an absolute football nerd.
Really?
There's no real insight. It's a nice little look behind the scenes.
Is it better than the
my
Juventus
God,
one?
our 70 million euro defender is injured. We're going to replace him with a 60 million euro defender. And the only thing on the documentary is Guardiola speaks in Spanish. But obviously they've had to tell him, well, this is in English, so if you could translate what you're saying. So the most disappointing part is ahead of the Champions League game against Liverpool, where you're thinking, wouldn't it be brilliant to get behind the scenes, an in-depth tactical look at how Guardiola goes through this. But because he's speaking in English, he's with his couple of assistants and they go, that Liverpool front three, they're very dangerous. We'll have to watch them. And you're like, this can't be it. Clearly there's a far more in-depth conversation that has been had about how they're going to tackle Liverpool, but you never see it or you never hear it. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt and saying that because they speak in Spanish normally, that they just couldn't be arsed translating it,
And-
which would have been far better.
Like Amazon were working with the club as well. Like, are they going to give them that much good stuff?
Well, if they're not, that's what I'm saying. They didn't. I think it's a nice little behind-the-scenes look at a Premier League team that you don't ordinarily get. But if you're looking for a deeper understanding of City or Guardiola, you're not going to get it.
We haven't got good flying the wall in sport in a long time. Like
They're all too conscious of what they're putting out, though, isn't that what it is?
I guess it is. Like all the best.
Here till
sports-
Sunday.
Yeah.
Exactly. All the best
on
sports
YouTube.
has been
Actually,
very.
the NFL stuff is pretty good if you watch anything that's on the.
How scripted is that, though? I know it's all very
Like we like
slick
I think
to
it's
look
like,
at.
Is it America's Games? The one that's
yeah,
the
it's one
Super
at the
Bowl
end of the
winners.
year,
I love that. I think it's great. Like, and to go back and we started watching it from the start this year. So we went back to the very first Super Bowl winners and then went through all the the Miami Dolphins that have 17-0. It's great. Like,
Yeah.
just because the players you wouldn't be familiar with and they've great stories. I really like those actually. They're really good for binge watching. I
Right,
get
so
through a load of them.
NFL America's Game and not Manchester City. So just to kind of recap on the lessons we've learned today, ladies and gentlemen. Succession.
They
We
got a
should
load
watch.
of films.
I go.
What else have you got?
Yeah.
Okay, from this year, Black Panther was brilliant. If you haven't seen it already, it's got a Golden Globe nomination. It's absolutely excellent. The other one that I put down is a horror film, but in case you're bored of all the Christmas stuff over Christmas, because there's going to be quite a lot of it, it's called Hereditary. It went completely under the radar this year.
Oh, I've seen
Collette-
the
I know.
trailer
It
for
was
that.
on bus stops and stuff.
No, it kind of came out
Or was
and
it on
then just
YouTube ads?
disappeared. And I don't think anyone appreciated how absolutely brilliant it was because it was a drama that was a horror. Toni Collette played the mother, and it haunted me. I mean, I kept waking up in the middle of the night terrified after watching this film. It's the scariest film I've ever seen, but it is absolutely brilliant. It is brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But the last thing I'm going to say is, if you need something to binge watch that you really want to get involved with, Mindhunter on Netflix was one of the best series I've seen in the last couple of years.
What's that again?
It's
couldn't
based
get
on the
into
true.
it.
Oh, it's so.
I've watched the first episode twice,
I
trying
found
to
it
get
hard
into
for
it.
the first 2 episodes, and then it's kind of like The Wire. Once you're in, you'll never be able to turn it off. It's so good. It's based on a true story about the FBI unit who started to look at the psychological background of the serial killers that they were investigating. Now, they'd never really done it before. It is absolutely fascinating. Really, really good.
Right, nice one. So that's Mindhunter. I think it's really just been a television recommendation
Creed 2.
series. Creed 2.
Well, I have Rocky down. Like, go and watch the whole Rocky series.
Yeah. Go do that.
Well, that's again perfect 11 o'clock at night material.
Yeah, and you get through the whole our Star Trek.
Or Star Trek, or whatever series you want, or Harry Potter.
Did you watch any good kids movies this year, Sue?
Where are we talking about? Wreck-It Ralph was pretty good. Was there another? Coco was in January.
Was it January?
It came out in January here.
Coco I thought was brilliant.
Coco was brilliant. Isle of Dogs was another great one. I watched it on the plane.
Oh yeah,
I think it's good.
I really enjoyed it. Really, really great.
Incredibles 2 wasn't great.
I loved Incredibles
That was
2.
fine.
That was all right.
Baby Jack was amazing with the raccoon. That fight sequence
That was good.
brilliant.
Yeah, that was good.
Gee, spoilers.
What about Peter Rabbit?
I didn't see Peter Rabbit.
James
I
Corden.
didn't see Panda
Gavin
Bear too.
Stacey. There you go.
It's all come back full circle.
That's what he did next, was it?
Yes.
Wow, he's doing voiceovers for movies now.
Fair
Things
play
are
to you,
really
James.
going well for James Corden. Can't wait to see what he does
Smithy.
next.
Huh? I wonder what happened to Chinese Alan and Budgie and Dino.
When in doubt, just put on Gavin and Stacey and everything is going to be okay. Sue, thank you. Nathan, thank you. Tommy, thank you. You all should have a very, very happy Christmas. Thank you for your recommendations. I can't wait to actually start watching television again. Thank you very much for joining us. Remember, get in touch with us on Off the Ball. You can follow us as well on Facebook and YouTube and all that stuff as well. We're back tomorrow morning on OTB AM. Presuming this is the last segment of the show from 7:45 AM. We'll chat to you then. Bye-bye for now.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie. Championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.